So many times we think that sin is related to our actions or our behavior. Sin is something that we do, something that we've done wrong, and a lot of times what we don't realize, a lot of times we're associating sin with our behavior and what we've done wrong and what we haven't done right. But sin isn't necessarily as much about your behavior as it's about the belief system that's caused your behavior. Sin is not as much about your behavior as it is about the belief system that's caused your behavior. And sin is really just a mindset of separation from God that somehow you believe in your mind that your life and how you live and who you are is actually can be separate from God and God's life. It's a belief system that you can actually have life outside of God, apart from God. But the truth is, and the truth that Jesus came to reveal and what the gospel actually unveils, is that there is no life outside of God. All life comes from God, and your life is in God, and His life is in you. And that it's just impossible to actually think that you can exist and live outside of the life of God that's in you, because all life comes from Him. God is the origin of life. He's the origin of your life. He is your origin, and you came from Him. And even though we may have lived with a belief system that came from Adam, it came through Adam's fall, that somehow we don't associate with Him, somehow we don't identify with Him, somehow we've created an identity that's actually separate from who He is or outside of who He is, or just different from who He is. It's called being alienated in your mind, Colossians says. It says that we were alienated in our minds because of the wicked works that we had done, and because of our behavior, we had created just this belief system, the being alienated, but really the behavior came from that belief system of being alienated, that we thought that we just had life outside of Him, that our life didn't come from Him. And so what develops is this knowledge. The Bible calls it the knowledge of good and evil, but what the knowledge of good and evil really is it's a natural knowledge based upon experience, based upon what's happened to us, based upon our traumas, based upon our hardships, based upon our bad experiences, based upon our good experiences. And we create this knowledge of good and evil that we live by, and that our body and that our emotions are trained by, where we start to determine subconsciously what's good, what's bad, what will work, what won't work. And we start to live with this knowledge, and this becomes just really a system of beliefs, a way that we process life, a way that we respond to life. And it basically becomes a knowledge that we live by that can shut down the truth, which is the truth is that God's life is in you, and that all of our lives are in Him. We are in Christ. And that's where the term really comes from. You're in Christ. Your life comes from Him, and your life originates from Him, and that all life is in Him. And but what this knowledge of good and evil actually does is it gets you to start to live a life and through an identity in your life that's basically determines what you think is possible and what you think is impossible, what you think is good for you and what you think is bad for you, what you think you can do and what you think you can't do. And this knowledge basically becomes the governing system in your beliefs, where your behavior and your actions and your life is dictated by what you've believed through this belief system of separation, this belief system of having an identity and a source of life that's apart from the life of God. And what God comes to reveal, what the gospel comes to reveal is that Christ is in you, that His life is in you, that you cannot have life outside of Him. It's called carnal thinking, and Romans 8 says that carnal thinking leads to death, but spiritual thinking leads to life and peace, because when you're thinking according to spiritual things or according to what the Spirit reveals, you're just connecting to what He believes and to what He knows is true. And that produces life, because He is the source of life. He is the source of all life in you. And so I was just talking with my wife this morning, and I was like, so often we just kind of have this knowledge of what we can and can't do, and who we think we are and who we don't think we are. And it really just shuts down the life of God that's in you, that basically where He's saying anything's possible with me. In my life, anything is possible. anything is possible for me to perform in you and through you when you don't shut down this life through this belief system of carnal thinking, or just believing you have an identity that's outside or different from who I am. And that's really what Adam brought into the world. Is it wasn't necessarily as much about Adam's sin wasn't necessarily as much about what he did as it is about what he believed. And what he believed was that what the voice the voice through the serpent actually got him to believe was, one, that God really wasn't as good as he thought he was, and that he was withholding from him. And the other thing that he believed was that that he wasn't like God, that he had to do something to become like him and to know what God knew. And so really what that voice got him to believe was that he wasn't from his father, and that he wasn't like his father. But his father had made him in his likeness and in his image. And so through that belief system of thinking that he was alienated from his father, or different than his father, or didn't know what his father knew, or just believed that his father wasn't truly good, his belief system led to the behavior where he actually partook of the fruit. And the fruit of his behavior was, eating from the apple, eating the fruit, eating the forbidden fruit. And so when we can recognize that we have lived by this knowledge of good and evil that we inherited from Adam, and we can realize that that's the very thing that Christ came to set us free from, was the knowledge of good and evil, which actually condemned us, and which actually led to a guilty conscience, because our conscience and our heart would condemn us because of our behavior, which came from this belief system of living outside of God and separate from God. And so what happens is our conscience ends up condemning us, and we end up judging ourselves. We end up condemning ourselves and allowing sickness and disease and all these things to come into our body, to come into our emotions and into our lives, because we've allowed this knowledge that we've partaken of to actually be the dominant force in governing our belief system and our lives. And it comes out in our behavior. And we end up acting like what we believe, that we're not like God, that we didn't come from him, or we're something completely different than him. So we act like it, and that's basically that. Those actions are actually what sin actually is. It's the fruit and the behavior of believing that you didn't come from God and you're not like him. And so in God, anything is possible. When we don't partake of the knowledge of good and evil, when we realize that's the very that knowledge is the very source of the old man and his belief systems that Christ came to crucify, that he came to do away with. Romans 6:6 says that knowing this, that our old man was crucified in Christ, that the body of sin might be done away with. And that old man is who we thought we were in Adam. It's how we associated with the old man in Adam. It's how we associated with this identity that we inherited from Adam, this belief system that we inherited from Adam, that we're separate from our Father, that he's not perfectly good, that he's withholding good from us, that we're something entirely different or completely different from who he is. And that's the old man. That's our identity in Adam. And Romans 6:6 says that the body of sin might be done away with, when you realize that old man was crucified. And the body of sin is really the belief system, our associations with that old man, all of the things that we started to believe about ourselves that were possible, impossible, good, bad, all these things that were based upon our experiences in life, that we processed in an identity where we just thought we were separate from our Father, that we didn't know where we came from, and we didn't know that we were actually in him, because all life is in him. And so that's what Christ came to set us free from. And when we can realize that old man and that body of belief system was crucified in Christ, that body of belief, that body of sin, which is the belief system, was removed and taken out of the way, then we can realize we don't have to associate with the old man the way that we used to. We don't have to associate with that old identity and who we thought we were. We don't have to associate with sickness. We don't have to associate with disease. We don't have to think about or have fear about sickness or disease. We don't have to live by that programming. We don't have to submit to it. We can disassociate from that belief system of that old man that he gave us and start to associate with Christ. Start to associate with the life of God who lives in us, in which all things are possible through him, and just becoming aware of his life in us and our identity in him, because Christ came to reveal our true identity, that we're sons, that we came from him, that we have a really, 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 really good Father that loves us, and his love is not conditional. It's not based upon our performance, because he knows that our performance was based upon that old belief system. So he doesn't hold us accountable for that old belief system, because he knows we inherited it through Adam. He doesn't condemn us or judge us, because God is love, and love doesn't condemn, and love doesn't judge. The only thing that love does is it looks to set us free from the things that do condemn us and judge us, so that we can fully experience love, and so that we can fully experience him and who he really is. And so I just wanted to, I was just meditating on that this morning as I was just thinking about what really limits us, what really limits the life of God in us and the power of God in us, and really the fact that Christ wants to do exceedingly abundantly more than we can ask or think. You know, Ephesians, it says, according to the Spirit and the power that works in us. And but the key is just stop associating with the old man. Stop associating with all of those beliefs that came from, the root of those beliefs came from a belief that you were separated from your Father, that your life you could live a life that was separate or outside of him, that he wasn't really a good father. That he wouldn't be there when you needed him to be there, that you couldn't trust him. And all those beliefs came from, you know, Adam's belief when he fell. And that's really what sin is it's that core of belief system that mankind incorporated and started to kind of adopt into his life. And everything came out of, all of his behavior, all of his actions, all of his lifestyles came out of that belief system. But Christ came to set us free from that and to reveal that that belief system's a lie. That voice that you've listened to is a lie. That thing's just tried to lie to you and get you to believe something that's not true about yourself and something that's not true about your Father. And Christ came to set us free from that, so that we can live with a clear conscience, so that when our behavior does not align with who we really are, we don't have to condemn ourselves and judge ourselves. We don't have to feel guilty. Hebrews 9 and 10 says that Christ made one sacrifice to completely cleanse our conscience from all consciousness of sin forever, from the sin of the past and the sin of the future and the sin that we do and the behavior that we have today that may not line up with who he is and who we really are. And Christ came to cleanse our conscience, because when your conscience is clear, you'll have no desire or tendency to act in those ways that are harmful to other people or to yourself. When your conscience is clear, you can live with just an awareness of your innocence, awareness that in you there is no sin, there is no, your spirit cannot sin. Christ has made you a new creation, and in your spirit is righteousness, peace, joy. He has justified you. He has made you new. He has given you new life. He's given you a new ability to see who you really are and where you came from. And your Father has always been the source of your origin. He has always been your creator. Even when we were disobedient, even when we were lost in our belief systems, even when we were living a life that was totally contrary to who he made us to be, he was still our Father. He was still our creator. We were still made in his image. It's just that our likeness started to get marred because we started to believe lies about ourselves. But he's always been your Father. He's always been good. And he wants to set you free in your conscience and cleanse your conscience. It says that, Hebrews 9:10, it says that the worshipers once purified would have no more need for sacrifices. You won't have a guilty conscience and a need to continue to make sacrifices in your life to please God or to appease your conscience, when you realize that what Christ has done and the sacrifice that he made is able to cleanse your conscience, and that he has justified you and making you innocent by raising Christ from the dead. And so I just want to bless you with that today. All things are possible through his life in you. Stop associating with the knowledge that says you can't do certain things, that says you have to be afraid of certain things, that says you have to be embarrassed, that says you have to feel guilty, that says your life, something bad's going to happen, your life is going to be difficult. All of that comes from the knowledge of good and evil. which came from condemning thoughts and thoughts of judgment that Adam believed about himself because of his behaviors. And we don't have to associate with that old man anymore. Christ came to set us free from that old man, and we now have a new man. We now have this new life, this new union of our spirit being one with Christ and being in God, where we can just ask God, what is possible today? And you can just ask God, what is possible today? What do you say to me that is possible today, that I can live this supernatural life where anything is possible and you can do whatever you want to do in me and through me? Bless you. Have a great day.